Welcome back to the Messiest Shop on YouTube. Today we're going to have a little fun, at least I think it's a little fun. I got myself a plasma cutter finally. And for those of you who don't know what a plasma cutter is, it's similar to cutting with a torch using oxygen and acetylene or oxygen and propane, in that you melt metal and then blow it away using a stream of air. The difference is that a plasma cutter melts the metal using electricity rather than burning fuels. Now what I got is a very common machine made in China, because there's a huge difference between, you can get a 50 amp plasma cutter made in China for less than $300. This one was $295 with shipping and tax. Or you can buy a Lincoln or a Miller if you're going to do a lot of plasma cutting and you need a high quality machine. You can get one of those where you're going to talk $600, $700, $800 minimum. So I went ahead and bought what I thought was a good value. Bought it from a US shipper. It's a Hong Kong company, they all are. But what I got is a cut 50. That's the important thing when you hunt on eBay, is for a cut 50. Because they all use the same internals basically, and it's a bunch of different companies that put their own cases and stuff on them. So let's see what we got here. Let's see, machine, I see that's a ground cable and a hose. Here's the torch, and the lead for that. That's some extra consumables, we'll get into that in a minute. And we got a nicely packaged machine, I gotta say, that's a nice machine. The brand name on this one, if you want to hunt by brand name, is a Vevor. V-E-V-O-R. So, before we even get into it, let's just take a look at this thing. I'm seeing it for the first time right along with you. It doesn't weigh a lot, about 20 pounds. See on here we've got a regulator adjustment, that appears. Yep, that's okay. So the adjuster, this is something I didn't realize. The regulator on this machine for the air is inside it. On a lot of them it's extra in the package, and you have to attach it to the back. This one appears to have just the air input on the back, and the regulator attaches. Now this is a 110 and 220 volt capable machine, and it came wired. This is something interesting too, is that it said one thing, and of course it came as another. It said that it wasn't going to have a power plug on it because of different countries' varying voltages, and then it showed up with a 110 power plug. But this machine auto adjusts inside between 110 and 220, and you don't get full amperage out of them, I don't believe, full cutting power, unless you run them on 220. So we're going to see here what it says in the instrucciones. Okay, it says it wants 60 to 70 psi, so I'm going to go ahead and stick another regulator on the back of it. But it does have its own internal regulator. So first off, we're gonna go ahead and try this thing out on 110. And if I understand the way that these are set up, on 110 it's good for about 35 or 40 amps of cutting, not its maximum rating 50 amps, because it needs to be on 220 to get that. But I could be wrong. What we got here? We got, okay, we got a little cam lock for the ground. And it goes in pretty decent. So far, I like the quality of, the way this thing looks. It looks decent. Now, there's two different kinds of plasma cutters. One of them is called a contact arc, and the other one is a pilot arc, which is what this is. And what the pilot arc means is that you don't have to make contact between the tip of the torch and the work surface to get an arc started, which means that the consumables last longer and it's easier to get your cut started, especially if you're cutting things like expanded metal mesh or thin things or rusty things, things with paint like I run into on vehicles all the time. So I spent the extra, it's about $100 difference. You can get a contact machine for less than $200, and it's closer to $300 to get a cheap pilot arc machine. So This wasn't the cheapest one on eBay, but it was the cheapest one that had shipping from the US and actually had a decent shipping time and didn't come from a seller that had 5 feedbacks, 3 of which were negative, saying that people never got what they ordered. So, took me quite a while to figure out which one I actually wanted. When I settled on it, this was it. And we're hoping I made the right decision. It's got a nice looking torch, nice long leads on it. Got 3 connections for the for the pilot arc machines. You've got the air positive connection and for the electricity. This is the ground for the pilot arc. The pilot arc machines all have the 3rd connector in the front of the machine. It's one easy way to distinguish them. And then it's got looks like a 3-prong control plug here that's keyed. It only goes in one way, and that's got a safety on it. So far this looks decent. We'll see how it runs. That's really the test, of course, and whether it lasts well. Pardon me. I'll start with it halfway up and turn up its little internal regulator. Now, I'm going to plug this thing into 110. Let's see first if it just goes. No huge sparks. No pilot light yet. Not sure why they sent this piece of hose, unless they mean for in case you need to build yourself a lead to hook. An extension hose to hook it up. Let me find a couple of pieces of scrap metal. Try some stuff that's thin and clean and some stuff that's thick and dirty and see how this thing goes. As I mentioned before, this machine works on an electric arc. It's basically a 50 amp welder that also has the valving set up in it to allow it to flow air to cut with. Go ahead and see how it works. It grounds just like a welder. You've got a ground plug here. Let's try this thin, somewhat rusty piece. Let's just do this right here. Let me set you guys up so you can see it. We've got our torch. Decent quality feeling torch. This is honestly slightly better build quality than I was expecting. And it's also a 12-foot torch. Some of them came as short as 6. I even saw a few 4-foot ones. So we've got that set in the middle of the amperage. We are 50 psi. Let's turn it on. Ooh, look at you. It's got a pretty high flow cooling fan going out the back of it. I'll set it on 40 amps, 39 amps, so we'll see if it'll cut. Now, being pilot arc, this should make an arc as soon as I press the button. Look at that, it does. As you can hear, it turns on the air and then it runs the air for a few seconds after the cut so that it doesn't, to cool the tip off afterwards. And this being a pilot arc machine, it doesn't have to make contact with the work. It just has to be close, and that's why they put this little guard here to get you started, because this actually means that the tip's not in contact. So, being that it's an arc machine, I'm going to put my welding helmet down. We're going to see if I can cut this. I have never cut with a plasma cutter. That's something else here. This is all new to me, and I'm really hoping that this is going to be a game changer in my shop. that. That's pretty neat, but that was very thin steel. Let's try this piece of 3/16 angle iron here that's new. Has slag and scale on it. Let's see if I can cut the corner off. I went a little fast and it scalloped the cutout, but boy, that certainly did work. I'm pretty impressed so far. Let's try it again, see if I can go a little slower and get a better quality cut. It's all experimental to me. Yep, when I go slower, it cuts really nice. Well, I can't say, of course, how it's going to last. This is just the absolute first impressions on this thing. But I have to say I am really impressed. A plasma cutter used to be what we called unobtainium, something that people that had a lot of money, had $1,000 they wanted to spend, just burning a hole in their pocket would do it if they wanted to, have some easy cuts. This thing is going to save me a lot of time, and I think a lot of money in the end in saving grinding wheels, cut-off wheels, death wheels as we call them, and various other things. Now, the other neat thing about this is it doesn't just cut steel. Let's nip the corner off a piece of aluminum just to see what it does. I screwed that one up. Alright. Well, it'll cut aluminum just fine. I am butchering it. I'm sure everybody out there in internet land is going to tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I welcome that, because again, first time I've ever cut with a plasma cutter. But I'm going to call that thing absolutely worth $300 so far, if it doesn't blow itself up in the first few times I use it. We got some slag on that. That would easily grind away. Already a cleaner cut than I would have got with a torch. Good torch work would be that clean, but that was really easy. I mean, this thing just zipped right through it. So I think in another video, I'm going to replace the plug on it. I got to pick myself up a 220 volt plug. We're going to put it on 220, crank it up all the way up on screech. It goes to 50 amps, and on 50 amps it's supposed to need 220 volts, and we'll see how it cuts for real. Alright, well, that was just a quick little one to unbox and give this thing a test. And like I said, if you're looking for a plasma cutter, it's called a Cut 50. Just Google Cut 50 and you'll find Amazon and eBay links to these things, and I'll let you know in a few weeks whether or not I regret this, but I'm going to say I recommend this so far. And you read the reviews on them, they're pretty good. So, anyway, thanks for watching. I'm going to cut some stuff up. Edit. I had the air compressor turned off so that it wouldn't make noise in the video. So this thing probably cuts better and doesn't make so much of a mess when it actually has its 70 PSI it wants for input pressure. So let's find out. Much better. Much more better. Yep. When it has a steady 70 PSI, it works way better. Carry on. Thanks for watching.